this edition of Southern Newsweek, a smartphone app becomes part of the arsenal that could help New Zealanders avoid skin cancer. A council-owned company attempts to recover thousands after it discovers damage caused by contractors. And we'll find out which newly discovered bird species is expected to draw more tourists our way. Kia ora, I'm Holly Buchanan. Kiwis are being given a new tool in the fight against skin cancer. A phone application has been developed to provide users with real-time information about levels of ultraviolet radiation. And health professionals are hoping it helps to save lives.
Taking measurements from the atmosphere, Cancer Society staff are using a new phone application for tracking current UV levels. It's aimed at informing users about when it's safe to be out in the sun and for how long.
We need New Zealanders to be a little bit more familiar with the properties of ultraviolet radiation. Because we have very high rates of skin cancer in New Zealand.
In fact, New Zealand and Australia have the highest rates of melanoma in the world.
We have about 40% higher levels of ultraviolet radiation than similar latitudes in the Northern Hemisphere because we have very clear skies, we don't have much pollution.
New Zealand's also closer to the sun over summer than the Northern Hemisphere and gets less ozone protection. The app's been developed in response to a request by a local plastic surgeon and senior medical lecturer. NIWA scientists have been involved in making the device, which is freely available on iPhones and Androids.
This is just a tool that people can use to measure, to see what the UV index forecast is for the day and hopefully take appropriate sun protection action.
Covering up is recommended for UV levels of 3 or more. Radiation peaks around midday in summer, but is not necessarily related to heat.
On a cooler, cloudy day in summer, the UV levels can still be really, really high and people can get quite burnt.
The Cancer Society is hoping the app reduces the rate of skin cancer by making people more aware of what they can't see, smell or touch. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
The future of more than a dozen community groups and charities is looking positive with the wiping of a significant debt. A $250,000 mortgage for Dunedin Community House has finally been paid after 15 years, and that means more money can be used for assisting residents.
Celebrating success and a debt-free future. Occupants of Dunedin Community House are acknowledging the end of their mortgage payments, having chipped away at $250,000 over the last 15 years.
It's a great relief because now we will have money available to, when we need to do repairs, that we have the money available instead of having to try and scrimp and save to get it.
There are 18 community organisations occupying the building in Moray Place and more on a waiting list to get in. The house was bought in 1999 and tenants moved in the following year, offering a range of crucial public services.
The late Brian Arnold, who had been on the council and a Member of Parliament, said the only thing he hadn't fulfilled was to provide a community house for Dunedin. And he asked me to take on the responsibility to make sure that it happened.
It's been a major community effort establishing the facility and paying it off. Building materials were donated by local firms and other organisations provided grants and support. Committee members even cleaned up the previously empty Whakaari Hospital, using it as accommodation to fundraise.
Everybody came together to try and make sure that we achieved Brian's dream.
The unique community house model is being replicated in other towns. Shared facilities and administration allows not-for-profit groups to channel more resources into their services. And with the building owned outright, expansion is a possibility.
Because we have looked at that in the past, but with a mortgage hanging over your head, it's a little bit hard to get into another building or expand this one when you've still got that being paid off.
Mayor Dave Cull says with Dunedin's ageing population and refugee arrivals, there's a growing need for the services offered at Community House. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
A council-owned infrastructure company is seeking to recover thousands of dollars in costs after a string of electrical incidents. Delta has reported a series of problems involving contractors from around the city that have caused damage to the electricity network. And staff are calling for businesses to become more safety conscious for the sake of workers and the public.
Sparking a critical discussion. Delta is trying to address a series of recent incidents by electrical network businesses that have caused damage and serious harm around the city.
Some people have been injured. One individual who put a spike through a cable was quite seriously injured. We understand he's recovered. The other implications are with overhead conductors coming down on the ground, there's a real risk to the public. There's also been a number of Aurora consumers that have lost their power for periods of time.
There's been 5 separate incidents in Dunedin and Mosgiel lately, cutting power to nearly 120 residents. Cases involved high voltage cable strikes, downed overhead lines and damaged power poles at the fault of contractors. Now Delta's trying to recover costs from the companies responsible, which could add up to $50,000.
A couple of the underground high voltage cables which have been tripped by diggers, they'll be significant numbers, and we'll be looking at full recovery of those.
The series of faults has sparked Delta to call for more hazard training. It has a safety framework in place for businesses, and there are also general electricity regulations and legal statutes to abide by. But staff say they're not being followed through correctly and more needs to be done.
There's clear protocols already in place. Most of these contractors know this. It's just they need to up their training of their frontline teams. They need to call it, we're here to help them. So if they need additional training or support, we're here to assist. But it's in no one's interest for this to carry on and for there to be more incidents.
The cost recovery comes as Delta is also seeking about $13.3 million, which it invested into a failed Christchurch subdivision. Annabelle Dick, 39. Dunedin News.
Local penguins are getting specialist treatment from a wildlife vet who's just started working in the city. She's treating injured birds during the molting season when they're more vulnerable to predator attacks, and it's a role she's hoping to keep.
On the road to recovery, injured penguins are getting first-class care from wildlife vet Lisa Argilla. She's in Dunedin for the next few weeks as part of the Yellow-Eyed Penguin Trust's latest conservation efforts.
Yellow-eyed penguins are in decline, and there are a number of injuries that I can assist with and fix them up and hopefully get them back out into the wild. So it's just really awesome to be able to provide that service down here so that I can get access to the patients a lot quicker. So that's definitely making a difference with the success rates that we're seeing with these birds.
The time between a bird being found and it receiving medical care can be the difference between life and death. Argilla's looking after 3 yellow-eyed penguins and 1 Fiordland crested penguin with varying injuries from suspected barracuda and sea lion bites. They're being treated at Otago Polytechnic's vet hospital.
Having a facility like the Polytech to be able to provide these amazing hospital wards for them is ideal, because that means that I can give them intensive care and we don't need to rely on just communicating with maybe someone who's not as experienced looking after these birds, and it also means that I can keep a really close eye on them.
Argilla's also taking time to teach students about wildlife vet nursing. It's a mutually beneficial partnership that Polytechnic staff are pleased with.
This is the Trust and Lisa going well out of their way to support the yellow-eyed penguin, and the Polytechnic's got resources that can help with that, so it's a great opportunity.
1 penguin was attacked by a dog, something Argilla says is preventable if people keep pets on leashes around the coastline. She's only in the city for 6 weeks but is looking at ways to stay permanently. For now though, the focus is on making sure her feathery patients live to fight another day. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
A new species of bird unique to Otago has been discovered thanks to local university research. Zoology department staff have identified the Otago shag as being a distinct species separate from its more southern cousin. And the revelation is set to help Dunedin's tourism industry.
Looking out for the locals. This University of Otago researcher is revelling in the discovery of a new bird species special to the region. A team's been studying the Stewart Island shag and realised there are 2 separate varieties, one of which is unique to Otago.
We've discovered that in fact there's not just one species, but there's a species unique to Otago called the Otago shag and one unique to Fovo Strait called the Fovo shag.
Scientists have suspected for years the shag was in fact 2 different species, but they haven't been able to prove it until now. Local researchers spent 3 years investigating DNA, body size and bone structure to determine the difference between the 2 birds. The Otago breed is more closely related to the Chatham Islands shag, and there are only a few left.
Within 100 years of Polynesian arrival, through overhunting and habitat destruction, it became restricted to the rocky offshore islands off Otago Peninsula where it survived, and it hasn't really recovered. And so we're dealing with new species with about 2,000 to 2,500 individuals.
The discovery of this local bird could mean a growth in ecotourism for the region. Rawlins says the Otago shag will increase Dunedin's wildlife profile and may draw more funding for conservation efforts.
It'll be big for ecotourism and probably draw a lot more birders to the region, because they will need to see the Otago shag and now the Fovo shag. But it also ups the ante and should attract more conservation funding to the Otago region.
Work is continuing in the Zoology Department lab to investigate more seabirds and marine species. Annabelle Dick, 39, Dunedin News.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, a local filmmaker lands the opportunity of a lifetime as her documentary is picked to screen at a famous festival. And it's party time for a local radio station, and it's marking the occasion by adding a visual to an oral story. Welcome back. A young Dunedin filmmaker has had her short documentary accepted into one of the world's most prestigious festivals. The 8-minute clip will be screened at the 69th Cannes Film Festival in May, and its shocking subject matter is sure to surprise.
Focusing on a touchy subject, Dunedin television reporter and filmmaker Annabelle Dick has been creating a short documentary about Grindr, the dating application for gay and bisexual men.
There is a big assumption about Grindr, and a lot of people don't know about it unless they are people using the app. So we wanted to kind of show people this secret world that does exist.
The 8-minute expose was filmed and produced in Christchurch last year for just $200. 20-year-old Dick was at broadcasting school at the time and made the clip with fellow student Kyan Crumdick. It won Best Student Film at the Show Me Shorts competition and has just been accepted into the Cannes Film Festival.
For me, it was an amazing opportunity to learn about Grindr and what kind of happens, especially in Christchurch with gay men.
The frank narratives within the film are shedding light on modern relationships and how some men are navigating romance.
They all said, as gay men, they are very upfront compared to, say, if it was a heterosexual relationship. So that was a bit of an eye-opener for me.
She and Crumdick have launched a crowdfunding campaign to raise enough money for them to attend the French festival in May. They're each needing about $5,000. So far, the grind's been polarising audiences, including Dick and Crumdick's friends and family.
They were an absolute shock. We had people walk out because these people are very upfront and open about these sexual experiences and what happens on Grindr. A lot of people are shocked by it.
The grind isn't available for the public to watch while it's being submitted to other festivals, but eventually Dick and Crumdick hope to share it with as many audiences as possible. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
A group of new students are out in force, volunteering their time and skills to help others in the community. They're giving up part of their orientation week to help assist a local charitable organisation. And it's a partnership that's benefiting all those involved.
Using many hands to make light work. Several university students from Toroa College are taking time out of their usual orientation week activities to show their altruistic side. They're sorting supplies and baby clothing for Pregnancy Help Dunedin, much to the delight of local staff.
We've been working with the university and Unicrew for a couple of years now, so we have groups of volunteers coming in periodically, which is fantastic for us. It helps us get a task done with sorting practical support, and it's also a good way for us to connect with university students as well too.
The partnership began last year when the university's volunteer centre contacted Pregnancy Help after seeing a call for assistance on social media. This is the second time students have come in during orientation week, and staff are happy to provide an opportunity for them to do some good.
For us, I mean, it's just so cool actually seeing these fantastic students coming along during orientation week. This is the other side of the really good stuff that goes on during O week, so it's brilliant.
These students aren't the only Toroa College residents getting out into the community, with another group helping at a local primary school. It's a way for the students to think beyond their own needs.
We're so privileged to be able to go to university, and it's really important that we give back to the community, and Toro really, it's an important part of being part of the Toro community.
The first year students are also using the volunteer time to bond ahead of their classes beginning next week. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
A local radio station is in the midst of celebrating a quarter of a century on air. Otago Access Radio is marking its 25th birthday with several events locally. And a coinciding exhibition is helping make the station's long audio history more visual.
Going back to the beginning, staff at Otago Access Radio are looking back on the station's 90s origins to help celebrate 25 years on air. The station began in 1991, producing just 6 hours of content a week, a figure that's increased substantially as the years have passed.
We wanted to acknowledge that community access broadcasting has a very special place. There are challenges around it. We virtually don't see any of that anymore in a national level in terms of our television. So these kind of local stations, and there are 12 access stations around the country, are really important, I think, for being the voice of the community, and that's why 25 years is worth celebrating.
The quarter-century milestone is also being marked with an exhibition at Toitū Otago Settlers Museum. For the next 6 months, the community case in the museum's research area will house a snapshot of the history compiled by staff past and present.
They're very much left the design and the finding of the material to us, and then we've worked with them into realising that in the way it's displayed, and they've done a fantastic job. We're very happy to have worked with Toitū on that.
The 25th is also a way to honour some of the people who've been integral in keeping the station running. Harford says it's been an amazing experience looking at how much it has changed in a relatively short time. He expects this is just the start of celebrations, with more stories beginning to emerge.
We fully expect that through the next several months we'll continue to celebrate the 25 years and to find out more about what people remember and the associations they've had with the station and its various guises.
The Toitū display is likely to be up for the next 6 months, with station staff planning complimentary events throughout that time. Harford's hoping the opportunity to look back is also a chance to focus on what's ahead with the next 25 years of community broadcasting in Dunedin. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
And just ahead on Southern Newsweek, international competition beckons a city teenager, and we meet an Ironman competitor who's about to face the biggest challenge of her life. Welcome back. A young athlete has been awarded a scholarship to help fund her dream of competing internationally. The local teenager is using her $5,000 grant to participate in an Australian contest, and in time she may be travelling a lot further than across the ditch.
Putting in the hard yards. This local heptathlete is training for her next international competition. Danica Davies is feeling honoured after receiving a scholarship through NZCU South's Young Achiever Awards.
Oh, it's such a huge help. I'm really grateful. It's a fantastic opportunity. It's making the Australian Champs a reality, because it is a big financial thing to go, because it is in Sydney.
Davies has been competing in athletics most of her life. She made the transition to heptathlon 2 years ago and is currently training 7 days a week. The sporting discipline doesn't have a huge following in New Zealand, so she often has to travel overseas to compete.
As you get older, from being a youth athlete to a senior athlete, you tend to specialise in a specific event, but I kind of kept my options open, did all the events, and so I just naturally gravitated towards multi-events, so heptathlon.
Davies will soon be starting her first year of tertiary study at the University of Otago. She's looking forward to the Oceania Champs in April and is also working towards the Commonwealth Games. Further international competition is possible through a United States track scholarship.
I can compete against bigger international fields, and also with there you can travel a lot with the colleges, so that wouldn't be in the next year or so, because I'm really happy here at Otago, so I'll probably focus on doing my degree here and then look at going over.
Davies is one of 2 local scholarship recipients. Annabelle Dick, 39. Dunedin News.
Pipe bands from around the lower South Island have been competing in Dunedin for a yearly showcase. The two-day event filled the Octagon with the sounds and sights of the city's Scottish heritage. But for the first time, there was no local entry.
Piping for the public. This is why Dunedin's called the Edinburgh of the South, with the city hosting an annual pipe bands competition. It involved groups from all over the lower South Island, but for the first time, locals weren't performing.
Just at the moment, Dunedin's going through a little bit of a lean period in terms of particularly the leadership of bands. So we've got plenty of learners. There's at least 2 schools running, private schools, that are teaching learners, but at the moment we lack a talented leader.
Just 7 and 8 bands performed on Saturday and Sunday respectively. There's usually 12 to 16 entries, making this the worst turnout in the event's history of more than 20 years. But organisers are optimistic about the future, as it was a one-off event in the capital, impacting on numbers.
There's the Edinburgh Tattoo going on in Wellington at the moment, so there's 1 or 2 bands we have lost to that event. They're actually performing, but also because it's the weekend, a lot of the players have gone this weekend to see the tattoo.
The 2-day showcase proved a hit with members of the public, especially visitors to the city. Cruise ship passengers and other tourists were intrigued by the display, as were tertiary students new to town.
The people are really fascinated by what we do and why we do it.
The reigning champions from Invercargill were the only ones with Grade 1 certification. Other competitors travelled from Christchurch, Timaru and Oamaru. Despite low entries, the event went off without a hitch. It's the biggest pipe band contest in the South Island, and now performers are tuning up for the Nationals, being held in Fielding in 3 weeks' time. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
A Dunedin-based triathlete is poised to take on her biggest challenge to date. Michelle Cobby will compete in this year's National Ironman competition in just a few weeks' time, and she's putting in the hard yards as often as she can.
Climbing to the top. Local woman Michelle Cobby's making the most of the next 2 weeks in the lead up to this year's National Ironman competition.
It's a pretty big race. It's a 3.8k swim, 180k bike and 42.2k run. And it's all at the same time. It starts pretty early in the morning and hopefully doesn't take all day or all night.
Cobby's wanted to compete in the triathlon event for several years and decided to sign up after returning home from Canada last year. It'll be the first time competing in the triathlon event, which kicks off in Taupo next month. But she's no stranger to these types of competition, having completed several marathons throughout the region.
I'm usually into my running. Like, running's a big part of who I am and what I do, and I've done 5 marathons and each time I keep improving, so I guess now it's time to challenge myself a little bit more, and what better way to do it than scare myself.
Cobby's spent months training in the 3 pursuits to make sure she's up to scratch for the competition. She's set herself a reasonable goal, aiming to finish the course in under 15 hours, but ultimately it's just about the satisfaction of completing the triathlon.
The training really puts in perspective how long things actually take, even if you do have a good pace. But I mean, when it comes to race day, it's totally how you're feeling. You can be like, okay, I did this really fast this day, but the next day you might feel sluggish or your body might not have recovered enough in time.
Cobby is one of 2 Dunedin locals competing in the Ironman competition next month. Annabelle Dick, 39, Dunedin News.
And that's all for this edition of Southern Newsweek. Remember to check us out on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, or take a look at our website at dunedintv.co.nz. I'm Holly Buchanan. Thanks for watching.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.